Welcome, friends, to another movie review installment. This time I'm joined by my dear friend Bruce, and we're going to be talking about Die Hard. So let's address the elephant in the room. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Well, let's just use clips from the movie itself to answer that question.
Hey, Merry Christmas!
Now I have a machine. Ho, ho, ho.
As you can see from those clips, point made. Understandably, I think there's a bit of confusion around Die Hard, and that is because Die Hard was never released or slated to be released as a Christmas movie. It was actually considered for a summer blockbuster, and that was unfortunately when it was released in the United States. However, the initial writer of the first draft of the movie, who based it on a book titled Nothing Lasts Forever, wanted the Christmas aesthetic. He just felt it would add some character to the movie. And he also wanted to include elements of references to Western movies and series. That is why you'll find so many one-liners based around Western movies and series.
Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Yippee-ki-yay, mother...
So initially, the director was chosen for Die Hard was upfront John McTiernan. He was at that point in time well known for producing and directing The Predator, which came from the same production house as Die Hard. And when they were looking for someone to cast for the lead role of John McClane, Bruce Willis, surprisingly, was not the first choice. Oddly enough, their first choice was Frank Sinatra, who was at that time 70 years old, so he understandably declined the offer. They then went through a whole list of actors, starting with Sylvester Stallone, moving their way through to Arnold Schwarzenegger and also Richard Gere. Unfortunately, they all declined the opportunity, and Bruce Willis was then chosen. Bruce Willis at that time was only known for television, and especially noteworthy was his role in the series Moonlight, which was screening on TV at that time. Understandably, investors didn't feel that Bruce Willis matched up with the whole macho aesthetic, because they thought that maybe that's what they needed for a leading action star. And this was again countered by the screenwriter and also in part by the director John McTiernan, because they just felt that they needed an everyman, so to speak, because it would have been a New York police officer who has to deal with the terrorists in the movie. So for those of you who don't know and have not watched the movie, Die Hard tells the story of a New York cop named John McClane, who ends up getting invited to a Christmas party by his estranged wife in Los Angeles at a building called Nakatomi Towers. Unfortunately for them both, what ends up happening is that the building is then taken over by a group of terrorists led by the late great Alan Rickman, playing Hans Gruber. And their goal in taking over Nakatomi Towers is to steal the bearer bonds that are in the vault of Nakatomi Towers. John McClane then ends up becoming, as he puts it, fly in the ointment of their plans, and he does whatever he possibly can to stop them from succeeding. From the get-go, what is most notable about Die Hard is the dialogue. Everything feels very real. The conversations don't feel forced, they don't feel scripted. The delivery is extremely natural, and there are moments spread throughout the movie where there are things that, in hindsight, you might have thought that would have been cut in this day and age. They're kept in to ensure that the people you're watching on the screen seem real. Cases in point are, there's a scene where the terrorist is waiting for the police to raid the building, and one of them comes across a vending stand that has chocolate. And unintentionally funny, he looks at it, grabs it, and eats the chocolate. Another case in point would be at that point when the police are raiding the building, one of them, which is obviously an extra for the film, accidentally pricks himself on a bush, and this was kept in. Again, these are just little signatures to make the movie feel real and make it feel lived in. The humor, which is almost like a hallmark of Die Hard, it's not forced in any way. It comes across as natural, and it's like these little points in the movie that helps to ease the tension, but it's not pushed down your throat, so to speak. even when John ends up having this little external dialogue with himself, it's to give us as the viewer insight into what he's thinking, and also effectively it echoes what we might be saying to ourselves while watching the movie.
Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs.
That again just makes it all the more easier to relate to John's character, and also makes it easier for us to become invested in him surviving this entire ordeal. Now, at the time when Die Hard was released, it was a bit mixed with critics, but overall it was a commercial success. The movie made a lot of money for the studio, and it effectively became the benchmark for what is now called a Die Hard movie. You'll find there were movies that followed thereafter, such as Under Siege, that all followed a similar pattern of a lone everyman hero having to take on a group of terrorists. The most recent example of this, which has a little bit of a fantastical bend to it, would have been A Violent Night. That movie told the story of Santa Claus fighting against thieves that are trying to rob a family. But again, these are all based on the blueprint that was and is Die Hard. I think the reason for that is because Die Hard, in every sense of the word, is an almost perfect movie. Yes, there are scenes here and there where, for the keen-eyed viewer, you'd pick up little things that don't necessarily prove true. For example, when the terrorists enter the building for the first time via truck, if you look behind them, there's no ambulance in the back of the truck, and that ambulance features later on because that's supposed to be their getaway vehicle. So it's not perfect in terms of little details here and there, but it's absolutely perfect in its execution. The pacing is great. The soundtrack really drives home that whole Christmas theme, as well as the action. The action is well choreographed and well filmed, and it's just a really good movie. To this day, if I can't figure out what I'm going to watch, I end up just doing a repeat viewing of Die Hard. If I do then decide, no, I don't really want to watch Die Hard, I will probably then end up watching Die Hard with a Vengeance, which again was also directed by John McTiernan. Just as a final note, I could say that John McTiernan is unfortunately a director that is almost underrated in a sense, because he's responsible for a hell of a lot of successful thrillers, and notable thrillers that have become, in their own way, benchmarks or signatures of the period. In the unlikeliness that you have not yet watched Die Hard, or don't even know about Die Hard, I would strongly recommend you watch this movie. I mean, Die Hard is, for all intents and purposes, a movie for any time of year, or you could just end up being like me and just make a Christmas Eve or Christmas movie that you end up watching. It's, for lack of a better word, a really great movie, and it was the movie that made Bruce Willis the breakout star that he is known for today. Thank you for spending time with me, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If there's anything that you'd like me to check out and give my opinion on, please do comment and let me know what it is. Otherwise, stay tuned, give a follow, subscribe. I will be trying to produce these as often as possible, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.
You want to know the secret to surviving air travel? After you get where you're going, take off your shoes and your socks. Then you walk around on the rug barefoot and make fists with your toes.